What would you do if your first night on the job came with a warning like this? If the lockers start banging after midnight, don't open them. No matter what you hear inside. I thought it was a prank. Some cruel joke from the school staff to haze the new guy. But later that night, standing in a silent hallway with every locker slamming in unison, bang, 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 like fists pounding from the inside, I realized it wasn't a joke. It was survival. I didn't plan to end up at a high school. Hell, I hated high school. But when the bills stacked higher than the excuses I had left, I took the only job that called me back. Night maintenance. That's what the ad said. No details. Just a number, an address, and the promise of steady pay. The school was in a town so small it barely showed on a map. A single blinking traffic light, a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 50s, and this hulking brick high school that sat like a tombstone at the edge of town. The first time I saw it, I knew something was wrong. The windows were too dark, the walls too still, like the building was holding its breath. And when I walked inside, the janitor didn't hand me a mop or a set of keys. He handed me a rule sheet, a laminated piece of paper, edges curled, words smudged from too many hands. At the top, in bold black letters, high school night shift rules. He didn't smile, didn't explain, just said, read them, follow them. If you don't, the building will eat you alive. The janitor's name was Mr. Lawson. His back was bent, his face pale, his uniform so faded I couldn't tell if it had ever been blue or gray. He didn't say much, just handed me the laminated sheet and led me down the hallway. The place looked abandoned, even though kids still went here in the daytime. The lockers were dented, paint peeling. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead like they couldn't decide if they wanted to stay alive. This school, Lawson rasped, ain't like the others. You follow the rules, you make it to morning. You don't. He didn't finish the sentence. He just left me in the hallway with a mop bucket and that sheet of paper. I unfolded it with shaking hands. The first line stared back at me. Rule 1. If the lockers start banging after midnight, don't open them. No matter what you hear inside. At first, I laughed. Lockers banging? What were they gonna do? Throw textbooks at me? By 12:15, I wasn't laughing anymore. The hallway was dead silent 1 second. Then a single locker door rattled, playing. Then another. Then another. Within a minute, the entire row was slamming shut in rhythm, like fists pounding from the inside. My chest locked tight. I froze, mop in hand, heart hammering against my ribs. Help me, a voice screamed from inside one. Boy's voice, young. Panicked, I took a step forward. My hand hovered over the cold steel. The voice was so desperate, so human. Then another voice joined in, a girl's this time, then a man's, then dozens, all screaming, all begging, all pounding in unison. The rules screamed in my head, don't open them. I staggered back, clapped my hands over my ears, and forced myself to walk away. The lockers kept slamming long after I made it to the supply closet. When the morning sun cut through the windows, I finally dared to check. Every locker stood wide open, empty, except one. Inside was a single shoe, small, red, burned around the edges like it had been pulled from a fire. Rule 2, the gymnasium lights. By the second night, I was already running on fumes. I hadn't slept right since the lockers. Every creak of the old school building kept me wired, waiting for something else to start. I unfolded the laminated sheet again. My finger traced the next line. Never turn off the gymnasium lights. If they flicker, fix them immediately. Simple enough, I thought. Just keep the lights on. At 1 a.m., I wheel my mop bucket past the gym. The place looked like a cavern. Bleachers stacked, basketball hoops hanging in silence, banners drooping with decades of dust. The fluorescents buzzed overhead, humming like angry bees. I'd almost passed by when the humming stopped. One by one, the lights began to flicker. BZZ click, BZZ click, until the entire gym plunged into blackness. The silence was suffocating. Then footsteps, not mine, heavy, slow, echoing across the court. I reached for the switch panel by the door, my fingers trembling. Nothing. The breaker tripped dead. From the dark came a sound like a ball bouncing once. Then again. The echoes stretched too long, bouncing off the walls in ways that didn't make sense. The rule pounded in my mind, keep the lights on. I bolted for the maintenance room, snatched a spare bulb, and sprinted back, chest heaving. As I fumbled with the switch, the footsteps quickened. Fast now, running straight toward me. The instant the lights blazed back to life, the sound cut off. The gym was empty, but a basketball sat at center court. Old, cracked, its leather burned black. I never touched it. Rule 3, the classroom mirrors. By the third night, the school had begun to feel like a maze. Long hallways that seemed to stretch farther than they did during the day. Doors that creaked open on their own. The air smelled like chalk dust and mildew. That night, the rule sheet weighed heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out during my patrol, my eyes catching the next line. Do not look into the classroom mirrors after midnight. Cover them if you must. Mirrors, I thought. Schools didn't usually have mirrors, except the old science wing. And sure enough, when I reached the chemistry classroom, there it was, a massive wall mirror above the lab counters, cracked at one corner, reflecting the dim glow of the emergency lights. Something was wrong. My reflection didn't move when I did. I raised my flashlight. In the mirror, my reflection raised it a second later, too slow, too deliberate. The hair on my neck stood straight. I forced myself to back away. My reflection's grin stretching wider, teeth too sharp. I remembered the rule. Hands shaking, I yanked a roll of black plastic sheeting from my cart, climbed onto a stool, and slapped it across the glass, taping fast. The second the last strip of tape went on, the room went silent. No buzzing lights. No whisper of air vents. Just silence. When I stepped back into the hallway, I glanced down. My shoes were wet, but the floor was dry. The wet prints led back into the classroom, into the covered mirror. And then they stopped. Rule 4, the boiler room. By the fourth night, my nerves were frayed. Coffee wasn't helping anymore. Every creak of the school felt like a whisper aimed straight at me. That's when the next line on the sheet surfaced in my mind. Do not enter the boiler room after 2 a.m. If the door is open, lock it. The boiler room sat in the basement, past the storage closets, where the air was always damp and metallic. Normally, the heavy iron door stayed shut tight. The padlock rusted and stiff, but that night it was open. The hall leading down was warm, too warm. Steam curled out from the doorway, smelling of sulfur and burnt copper. I crept closer, heart thudding. From the shadows inside came a steady sound, like breathing. Slow, rhythmic, not mechanical. Not the boiler. I reached for the padlock with shaking hands, ready to swing the door shut, when something shifted inside. A shape rose from the glow of the boiler. Huge, too big to fit the room, its back hunched against the ceiling. Its skin gleamed like wet stone, eyes glowing faint red in the haze. It turned, and it smiled. I slammed the door shut so hard the walls rattled, clamping the padlock until my fingers bled. The breathing grew louder, rattling the hinges, shaking dust from the ceiling tiles. Then silence. When dawn came, I checked again. The padlock was still in place, but scorched handprints, massive and blackened, covered the door, like something had pressed against it. Waiting. Rule 5, the library. The fifth night, I drew the short straw. My patrol took me past the library. In daylight, it was harmless enough. Rows of dusty shelves, paperbacks falling apart, old science journals no one read. But at night, the place felt wrong. The air was heavy or stale, like the books themselves were holding their breath. The rule sheet's warning burned in my memory. Never enter the library after midnight. If you hear pages turning, walk away. At 12:47, as I passed the double doors, I froze. The sound was faint, but unmistakable, pages rustling, one after another. I knew I should keep walking, but my curiosity itched. Slowly, I leaned close, peering through the glass panel. That's when I saw them. The books weren't on the shelves anymore. They floated, dozens of them, hanging in the air, pages flipping as if read by invisible hands. One book drifted toward the door. Its pages flapped violently, words bleeding across the paper as if they were being rewritten in real time. I staggered back, my chest tight. The rustling grew louder, like hundreds of whispers layering together. The books pressed closer to the door, pages tearing themselves apart, ink spilling into shapes I didn't understand. I bolted down the hall. By the time I reached the stairwell, the whispers cut off like a blade. When I passed the library in daylight, everything looked normal again. Books back in place. Tables neat. But one title sat alone on a desk by the door. It was a maintenance log. My name scrawled across the cover in handwriting that wasn't mine. Rule 6, the gym. The sixth night, my patrol shifted toward the gymnasium. I hated that place after dark. During the day, it smelled of sweat, floor wax, and squeaking sneakers. At night, it was cavernous, echoing, every sound bouncing until you couldn't tell where it came from. The rule sheet had been clear. Never enter the gym after 1 a.m. If you hear a basketball bouncing, do not investigate. At 1:12 a.m., as I passed the heavy double doors, I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. A basketball dribbling, slow and steady, on the wooden floor. My stomach knotted. The sound grew sharper, echoing through the empty halls like it was following me. Against every instinct, I peeked through the small window in the door. The court was empty, but the ball was moving. It dribbled itself across the polished floor, bouncing perfectly, as if an invisible hand guided it. Then it stopped mid-bounce, hanging in the air. I stumbled back from the door, breath caught in my throat. The ball dropped with a deafening slam, then rolled toward the door as if it knew I was there. The gym went silent. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on that window until I rounded the corner. My skin prickled the whole walk back to the janitor's closet I used as an office. The next morning, I avoided the gym entirely. But when I walked past the equipment room, a basketball sat in the middle of the hall. Its surface was slick, not with sweat, with blood. Rule 7, the locker rooms. If the gym was bad, the locker rooms were worse. Long tiled corridors that always smelled faintly of mildew and chlorine, even though the pool had been closed for years. The rule sheet had warned me. Never check the locker rooms after midnight. If you hear the showers running, do not enter. On the 7th night, as I was making rounds, I passed the corridor leading to the locker rooms. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I heard it. The hiss of water. Showers. Multiple. All running at once. I froze. The whole wing had been shut down for months, maybe years. The water was supposed to be cut off. Still, steam curled from under the door, drifting lazily into the hall. My breath caught. It wasn't regular steam. It was black, like smoke, and it clung to the ceiling as though alive. Then I heard voices. Not conversations. Whispers. Dozens of them. My hand hovered over the door handle. Every bone in my body screamed at me to check inside, to prove it was just pipes, just pressure in the system. But the rule rang clear in my head: do not enter. So I backed away, step by step, eyes locked on the door. The whispers rose, overlapping until they were almost screams. The sound of dozens of fists slammed against lockers, metal ringing out in chaotic rhythm. I bolted down the hallway, hard hammering, until I was back near the main office. Silence. When I dared return at dawn, the door to the locker room was open, just a crack. Inside, every locker stood ajar. Steam still curled through the air, dampening the floor. But the walls were the worst. Every inch of tile was covered in handprints, wet, smeared, streaked downward, like someone had been dragged along them. Rule A: the vending machines. Never use the vending machines after midnight. By the 8th night, I was running on fumes. Coffee wasn't enough anymore, and my hands shook from exhaustion. When I passed the break area near the teacher's lounge, the vending machine hummed louder than usual. Then it clattered. A candy bar dropped into the tray, without anyone touching it. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since lunch, and the sight of that silver wrapper was almost too tempting. I bent down, hand hovering just above the tray, and froze. Through the glass, the rows of snacks shifted. Slowly, bags of chips crumpled as if squeezed by invisible hands. The cans of soda rattled against the glass in unison, hissing as if shaken. Then the machine lit up. Every row displayed the same thing, single item. Not candy, not soda. A tiny blood-red box with my name on it. The humming grew into a roar, vibrating the floor. The machine shook so hard it nearly toppled. I bolted down the hall, the roar chasing me until I slammed the supply closet door shut. When I returned at dawn, the vending machine sat quiet. But the tray wasn't empty. Inside was the red box, still waiting. Rule 9. The auditorium. The auditorium was the one place I avoided the most. Even during the day, it felt wrong, rows of empty seats staring at a stage that smelled of dust and mildew. The rule sheet had been crystal clear. Do not enter the auditorium after midnight. If you hear the piano, walk the other way. I didn't believe it until night 9. At exactly 12:45 a.m., as I walked past the double doors, I heard it. A single note, low, hollow, hanging in the air far too long. Then another. A melody began, slow, haunting, almost beautiful. The kind of tune that pulled at your chest, begging you to step inside. My hand twitched toward the door handle. Then the singing started. Children's voices, dozens of them, rising in eerie harmony, words blurred and slurred like they were underwater. My blood iced. There hadn't been students in the building for hours. I forced myself to turn, to walk away, but the piano quickened, notes hammering in a frenzy. The singing grew louder, closer. And then I realized it wasn't coming from behind the auditorium doors anymore. It was coming from the hallway ceiling above me. I bolted, sneakers slamming against the tile, until I reached the stairwell. The music stopped instantly. When I checked the auditorium at dawn, the piano lid was open. Keys pressed down by themselves. Every seat had a program laid neatly across it. Each one had my name on the cover. Rule 10, never stay past dawn on the 10th day. The final rule was short, blunt. No one lasts more than 10 nights. Leave before the 10th sunrise. I thought I was tougher than the paper. Thought the stories, the whispers, the warnings were just tradition, like old janitors scaring rookies. But by the 10th night, I knew better. At 4:55 a.m., the building went still. No humming pipes, no buzzing lights, just silence, heavy and suffocating. Then the clock stopped. Every hallway clock, every classroom clock, even the one on my wrist, frozen at 4:56. From the gym, I heard the bleachers slam open. From the cafeteria, every tray clattered to the ground in unison. From the science labs, the burners hissed though no gas was lit. The school wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it had noticed me. By 5 a.m., the doors began to close. One by one, slamming shut so hard the walls shook. Locking me in, I grabbed my bag and sprinted. The halls twisted, longer than they had any right to be, stretching into infinity. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but I didn't stop. At 5:30, I burst through the front entrance just as the sun cracked the horizon. Behind me, the school groaned, almost disappointed. The second my boots hit the street, the door sealed shut, the building standing quiet and ordinary again. I never went back. The paycheck is still sitting in my drawer, untouched. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the echo of that piano, and it's always playing my song. I survived 10 nights in that school, but I'll never step inside again. The rules kept me alive, barely. The real question is, will they keep you alive too?